Peace to you, everyone. So, I wish I was wearing my Creek Nation shirt. Oh well. Have you guys ever read stories? You learn of historical events that maybe you knew a little bit about, and then you looked into it more and it really bothered you, like a lot more than it ever did before? Or maybe you knew about this and you revisit this, and then you get just as mad as you did before. Maybe worse. Okay? Boy talking. So I'm going to read all y'all, some accounts of the Trail of Tears, particularly the Creek portion of this. There's a Cherokee reference as well that I'm going to go over. Okay. I want to preface this by saying I've mentioned a number of times, the Fort Mims massacre, and I can imagine the anger that some of these white folks would have had towards the Creeks. Even though at the Battle of Horseshoe Bend, you had a bunch of lower Creeks that were fighting on the side of the American government. Individuals like William McIntosh, Timothy Barnett, aka Timpucci Barnard, and others with more like Creek, like entirely Creek names. Okay. And yeah, you're gonna have people that say, oh, they're all a bunch of sellouts and this and that. Okay. There's two sides to every story. But by the end of this, I hope you're going to see that even though I'm a pretty fair person, I'm going to take a side. And the last thing I'm going to read is going to be kind of what cements that a little bit. Now, again, there's two sides to each part of the issue. And there was a lot of division among the Creeks after the Creek War of 1813, I believe it was, during the War of 1812. So Horseshoe Bend pissed a lot of people off on the Upper Creek side. And understandably so. But at the same time, it's like, what do you do about Fort Mims? How do you reconcile that? How do you reconcile burning alive women and children? Not just men, but women and children. Because you can't. You can't reconcile that. You can't justify that. I don't care. And I am sympathetic to my people, okay? Let's put it that way. But I'm going to call a spade a spade. I don't care who does it. Because you'll never fix the problem unless you address it. Okay? There's a lot to unpack here. So this right here is Journal of Edward Diaz, Creek Removal, 1837. On the route of a party of immigrating Creek Indians kept by Lieutenant Edward Diaz, U.S. Army dispersing agent in the Creek immigration in charge of the party, 16th of May, 1837. So I mentioned 1836-37 removal. It kind of went from, I think, 1836 to 1838. It was kind of a process. There were also self-immigrants, some who I think left before that, but after the 1828 immigration. And there's those who left after the 1836 to 38 removal, who hadn't got caught yet, I guess. I think I need to look more into the self-immigrants and kind of see why it took them so long compared to the Trail of Tears victims. And but it appears that they may have been supported in their removal, their self-immigration. Anyways, 16th of May, 1837. Today, the party of Creek Indians, the collection of which for immigration I have been charged with, was turned over by me to an agent of the Alabama Immigrating Company at a point 4 miles south of Gunter's Landing, North Alabama. The party number 543, as shown by the muster rolls, period. After due consideration of all the circumstances, I find that the route by water to the new Indian country west of this Mississippi River at the present time, punctuation's kind of weird, is preferable to that by land. I have therefore indicated this mode of transportation for the present party. These Indians are part of those Creeks that fled from their own country in Alabama after the treaty with the tribe of 1832, hoping probably by taking refuge among the Cherokees to be placed upon the same footing with the latter people in reference to the necessity of immigrating to the West. If I'm not mistaken, there were some Creeks that tried to blend in with the Cherokee and who later got caught. People really had it out for the Creeks, from what I understand. So anyways, they have been apprehended at various points in the Cherokee Nation, scattered over an extensive tract of thinly settled or barren country. For this reason, and owing to the inaccessible retreats in which they were found by the troops and the difficulty of procuring subsistence and transportation in such places, and also the necessity of employing agents of intelligence to take charge of the Indians when apprehended, it has required a good deal of experience to prepare the present party for emigration. Okay. 9 flatboats have been purchased by the contractor to be used until steam conveyance can be procured below the Muscle Shoal Falls in the Tennessee River. 4 of these flats are the largest class of 80 feet long, about 80 feet long, the others 40 and 50 feet in length. This allowance is sufficient to ensure health and comfort to the people. I don't know how true that is. I turned the party over this morning at the encampment of Tennessee Volunteers about 4 miles south of Gunter's Landing, where the Indians had been grounded for the last week. They were moved to the water's edge by noon, and about sunset, the whole embarked on the flatboats and are at this time, 10 o'clock p.m., progressing slowly by the force of the current. There are but very few cases of sickness at present, and the weather is very favorable in this respect, for the time being. 17th of May, 1837. The boats continued to float all last night and until today at noon, when the reached Ditto's Landing, 30 miles from the point of starting. You gotta love the spelling and the punctuation marks, too many commas, periods where they don't belong. That always bugs the crap out of me. If I'm writing a paper, I'm very particular about things like that. So 30 miles from the point of starting. They were then obliged to stop until 5 p.m. on account of the wind, when they again set out and are still floating, 10 o'clock p.m. 18th of May. About 4 o'clock this morning, a heavy wind suddenly arose, by which the boats were compelled to land in the dark, and we were so unfortunate as to lose 15 of the Indians, who took this opportunity of making their escape. Owing to the continuation of the wind, the boats could not re-embark until near sunset, and are still floating at 10 o'clock p.m. 19th of May. Hope I can get through this fast because there's other stuff I want to get into. The flatboats with the party on board continued to float all last night and today until 3 o'clock p.m. when they were landed on account of wind a few miles from above Decatur, which place is 60 miles from Gunter's Landing. The party re-embarked about sunset and is now progressing slowly, 10 o'clock p.m. He keeps doing this at 10 o'clock at night. Early this morning, the weather... 20th of May. Early this morning, the weather became stormy and the boats were obliged to land before daylight, and in consequence, we have lost more of the Indians by desertion. Wonder why. The boats were separated when they were landed, and immediately after some of the smaller ones touched the shore, the people on board of them took advantage of the darkness and rain to make their escape. Okay, there's no parentheses back in those days, it seems. As soon as the other boats landed, every exertion was made to overtake and bring them back. Michael, sit up. Michael, get down. Don't do that. Okay. Where was I? As soon as the other boats landed, every exertion was made to overtake and bring them back. By offering a reward of $1 for each that should be returned, I recovered 15. The remainder, 56 in number, could not be overtaken in time and succeeded in making their escape to mountains 5 miles distant. The weather has continued rainy through the day. No progress has been made, but we shall probably start tonight. We are at present at Browns Ferry, 12 miles below Decatur. Michael, you can't stand that far away. You got to get closer, okay? All right. Hold on a second. I want to see if there's anything. I should have reread this before starting the video. This is very technical. Let me skip ahead here. June 5th, 1839. Wow, 39, not 38. Today, the muster roll of the party of Indians that was yesterday delivered over by me at the Creek Agency on the Verdigris River, certified by the dispersing agent of the Creeks West. I have no fault to find with the immigrating company in regards to the removal of this party. I believe the Indians have received every allowance they were entitled to, with one trifling exception, were treated in company with the requirements of the letter and spirit of the immigrating contract. This exception was the failure to have constructed... Mike, go over there. This exception was the failure to have constructed some necessary fixtures which were essential to cleanliness on the boats, so much for comfort, and which I was promised should be put up before starting. Their construction... Michael, stop it. Their construction were delayed several days and never were finished as I wished them to be. Had not their necessity been superseded in a few days by the infrequent stopping of the boats, I should have employed carpenters to make them and have charged the expense to the contractors. When the miserable and impoverished condition of many of their people, some months previous to starting, is considered, and the imperious effects by that such circumstances was calculated to produce upon the health and constitutions of many of them, and when it is also remembered that they were in a party closely confined under guard for several weeks previous to setting out, and when the unhealthy season of the year is also taken into account, I do not think that the amount of sickness and number of deaths upon the route has been by any means great. I don't know. Blah, blah, blah. Anyways, this is more technical. This is actually less of what I want to read. I'm going to go ahead and read a quick extract. This is Cy Hicks, Creek interview, 1937. He said, the Indians will vanish. Quote, the Indians will vanish, unquote, has been the talk of the older Indians ever since the white people first came to mingle among them. They seem to prophesy that the coming of the white man would not be for their good when the step towards their removal to a country to the west was just beginning. It was the older Indians that remarked and talked about themselves by saying, now the Indian is redundant here. Now the Indian is now on the road to disappearance. This had reference to the leaving of their ways, their familiar surroundings where their customs were performed, their medicine, their hunting grounds, and their friends. When they had reached the new home in the Indian Territory, their conversations were about their old homes, and they said, we have started on the road that leads to our disappearance, and we're facing the evening of our existence that are nearly the end of the trail that we trod when we were forced to leave our homes in Alabama and Georgia. In time, perhaps our own language will not be used, but that will be after our days. Yeah, we're kind of there, almost. We're trying to bring it back. Michael, you need to ask me, and I'll help you, okay? Here, I'll open this for you. I know you love Cheetos. Here you go, buddy. There you go. What's that? I love you too. Yeah, go ahead and eat those, Michael. Those are delicious. All right, so yeah, so our own language is not really being used that much. We're trying to bring it back, but there's been it's bad enough that the schools kind of stopped. You have a bunch of full-bloods that can't speak Creek right now. They're old. Okay, they have young full-bloods, kind of, and a bunch of mixed bloods who are kind of like learning some of the language, and it's really a weird situation. Cy Hicks was not wrong. This is 1937, and he's referencing earlier times. Trying to think the order in which I want to do this. I don't want this to be like a 40-minute video. Oh, come on. What happened to the rest of this one? You gotta be kidding me. Oh, dude, this didn't print the way I wanted it to. Oh, this is so dumb. I'll get some of this. That bothers me. I thought I printed that whole thing up. I know, Blackout, you've seen this. I wish I had the whole thing printed. I'm really annoyed that the whole thing didn't print the way I wanted. Anyways, okay. We have some pre-Civil War stuff here. We got some Cherokee Trail stuff here. We got a first-hand witness who died in the 1940s, 1944. A first-hand witness of the Trail of Tears from Greenleaf Town, my town. Okay, we're gonna get into this first, even though we're kind of jumping back and forth. I mentioned earlier how there's always two sides to every story. Well, there are. I'm trying to be sympathetic to both sides because both the Upper and Lower Creeks, I share their blood, and they're both Muskogee people. And they each had their reasons for taking sides as they did. So I think the lower Creeks, some of them may have had some greed. Maybe that wasn't always the case. I don't want to say that, oh yeah, McIntosh was just a greedy, sellout, da. But that's how a lot of people felt. Until they had to sell out because they had no choice in 1832. We'll proceed. Extracts from the Journal of David B. Rowland, Creek Removal, 1836. So, extracts from the Journal of David B. Rowland, Baptist Missionary to the Western Creeks, 1836. It's very interesting when you look at the history of the Muskogee people that converted to Christianity at that particular time. There's a lot of persecution from the traditionalists against the converts. There was stuff going on. That's a story that needs to be told more, by the way. So, September 12th, 1836, 2,300 Indians arrived in this country recently from the Old Nation. They are hostiles. That's both true, but it's also kind of a political statement. He's talking about the Upper Creeks, okay? Before they started from their old home, they were coupled together with chains. Chiefs and warriors, old and young, down to boys, wore those chains till they reached the side of the Mississippi. So they hopped on boats, and some of those boats, some people sank to death. But, anyways. But hey, they're hostiles, right? It's all, right? The only good Indian's dead Indian, right? Two prominent chiefs, Nirmathlar and Niar Miko, headed this company. Nirmathlar is a great warrior. So he's giving, this guy's actually, when he's saying they're hostiles, he's using the technical term for them. Because he's a missionary who's I think, white American. He knows that these people were considered hostiles. And so but he's also not necessarily judging them. I think he's just using the technical term. Because right now here he is, he's actually saying Nirmathlar is a great warrior. He fought desperately in a previous war, but begins to feel the influence of old age. So he's observing the guy's situation, and he's also praising him for his, previous abilities as a warrior. Okay, so that's why I'm not seeing as much of a bias against these hostiles from Mr. Rowland. Okay. Per se, but we'll continue. A part of this company are the Uchis, who are noted for their thefts, robberies, and murders. I want to look into that a little bit more. That might be, maybe they're noted for such, but those reports might be a little bit biased. I need to look into that a little bit more because they, as I understand it, the Uchis as a people, never wanted to be conquered by anybody. They banded with the Creek people because they had no choice. They needed to have someone to side with for greater protection, and they were not conquered, from what I understand. They joined with their own free will. And to this day, they have a very distinct identity in the Creek Nation, and they want to have their own federal recognition. Thing is, they don't have separate treaties. All the treaties relating to them have to do with Creek Nation. Or those who were part of Cherokee Nation, same situation. But there's no individual Creek treaties that are current that have anything to do with them as an independent group. So unfortunately, anyways, that's neither here nor there. The point is, I want to know the behind this statement here, okay? Anyways, yeah, thefts, robberies, and murders. Even after this company left for this country, there had been much excitement among all classes here. Probably you were aware that the M apostrophe and Tosh, meaning Macintosh, family have had the controlling influence over this Western nation from the first. So in 1828, yes, they did. Them and the Perrymans and all those who banded with them, they're the ones who built Creek Nation in what is now Oklahoma. Before the hostiles, Upper Creeks, made their way west. And they didn't have much of a choice. And we're going to get into that here, okay? We have to take that into account as well. That's why I'm trying to be sympathetic to both sides. Both had their reasons for doing what they did. Both had some, I believe, valid reasons too. So that's why I'm trying not to be like, oh, no, William McIntosh, bad, everyone else good. No, that's stupid. That's ignorance. So I apologize if I offend anybody by saying that, but that is my opinion, at least, based upon what I've seen. So again, probably you are aware that the McIntosh family have had the controlling influence over this Western nation from the first. Such is the fact. Yeah. They have watched with a jealous eye all immigration to this country. Indeed, they say that the last company, this last company and others that are on their way have no business here. Okay. It is reported that not long since the Cherokees and the McIntosh Party held a secret council when the Cherokees pledged themselves to support Raleigh McIntosh as principal chief of Creek Nation against the claims of all immigrants. Raleigh is the brother of the late General McIntosh. Chili would be the son of William, and he was a very important man as well. So the last week, Raleigh McIntosh and Nermarthlar had a talk in presence of General Arbuckle at Fort Gibson. Nermarthlar said, it belongs to me of right to be chief, and I will be chief. Raleigh replied with warmth, meaning heated up, you shall not be chief. I will take the sword first. These people hated each other. And I'll be honest, you can't expect those who immigrated in 1828, who built Creek Nation up to that point in that part of the country, to say, okay, you guys now get to control the government. Come on, dude. Let's be realistic. I realized that the federal government was banding us all together again, creating kind of a Civil War strife situation, considering what happened years prior, about 2 decades prior, for the most part, and a decade prior, decade and a half. Anyways, yeah, I'm just 1825, 1826, when McIntosh was either murdered or executed, depending on who you ask. Okay, I will take the sword first, Raleigh says. General Arbuckle had anticipated differently, and several weeks ago sent an express to the governor of Arkansas for a reinforcement of troops. Apothiholar, that's the way he's spelling Apothihola, is the chief that ordered General McIntosh's death. That is true. And technically, McIntosh did commit a capital crime by selling the bones of our fathers. Okay, technically, he did commit, what they consider treason. His motives, though, that's the debate. Because if you think about it, they knew the white man better than the Upper Creeks did. They understood them. And it made more sense to them to move west, which the others ended up having to do anyway. Seems like McIntosh was right, even though he technically committed treason to do so. So, anyways, there's a lot of stuff that happened. Anyways, Apothiholar is the chief that ordered General McIntosh's death. It is said that he is on his way to this country with a party of 8,000. The sons of General McIntosh say he will not live 24 hours after his arrival here. It's like, this is the guy that killed our dad. No, he's not gonna live long. That's not how it happened, by the way. Well, then you flash forward another, 25 years, some odd, and, things start to change. The 24 hours after his arrival, they seem fully determined to revenge the death of their father. The company that had last arrived say that the Indians that were friendly to the whites and assisted in chaining them, robbed them of their horses and flocks and other property, and when they arrive here, which it will be in a few months, they are determined to have satisfaction. With sore feet, with dying children, with dying old... I don't know if that's really a smart idea to start a civil war, but whatever. In short, such is the state of things among themselves. According to human probability, there must be revolution ere long. The excitement that now exists, and that will exist for a time to come, is very unfavorable to all missionary operations. Now we get to the point here, okay, because he's a missionary, he's a Baptist missionary. Okay, there is at this time much prejudice in the minds of some of the nation against missionaries. Before the late immigrants arrived, the Indians held a council. General Arbuckle present, with some of the chiefs, requested him to remove all missionaries from among them. They brought certain accusations against all on the ground. What the specific charges against me were, I have not yet ascertained. When my health is sufficiently good, I design to know and forward the same to you. September 18th, the assembly at worship, he gets into his own, ecclesiastical stuff. Assembly at worship was large and solemn, while I endeavor to point them to the day of judgment and bring its awful, interesting scenes to view. Probably reading John's Apocalypse. From January 21st, 1836 to this date, 8 have been baptized, 6 have received the letter, 2 have been excluded, 1 has died in the faith of the gospel. 25. This day, preached to a full assembly, probably for the last time in this nation. I addressed the disciples and the congregation to whom I've accustomed to speak in the name of my master for nearly 2 years past. My own heart was dissolved, and the assembly was melted into tears as I bade them adieu. At an order from the president, William Armstrong, or from the agent, William Armstrong, bids me to depart, and I, in this wilderness, in the midst of wolves, for whom the sympathies of my soul have often been drawn forth, I rejoice that the great shepherd still cares for them and will preserve them safe unto his heavenly kingdom. Source, Baptist Missionary Magazine, 17th of January, 1837. Okay. This is a sad story, and I'm really pissed that part of this got deleted. James Scott. This is actually from A Sacred Path, The Way the Muskogee Creeks. The photo is of James Scott. He's pretty old at that point. Okay. The late James Scott, who died around 1944 at about 110 years of age. Okay. He walked the Trail of Tears from Alabama, Georgia region to Oklahoma when he was 7 to 8 years old. His parents died during the removal. He was from Okemah, Oklahoma, well, once he got there, of course, and belonged to Greenleaf Ceremonial Ground, it spells it. Since he had outlived most of his contemporaries, he was a major resource on Creek history and culture and was well known for his storytelling abilities. This is the book that's being referenced. With others, he incorporated Greenleaf Church in 1910, a little ways from Greenleaf Traditional Ceremonial Grounds, and stayed in touch with both groups. I've been to Greenleaf Baptist Church, by the way. I'm not inside of it, but I've been in front of it. It's pretty beat up right now. At over 100 years old, Scott was alert and talkative. He chewed tobacco and carried his own medicine pouch. The following is his recollection of the Trail of Tears. One morning, when it was already getting cold, a runner came to our village out of breath, saying haughtily, "Talking papers. There are sitting people with talking papers who are already disappearing. What's left behind is being stolen. They're sending us to a burial ground. They keep talking about Judgment Day." I really wish I should have prepared this. Let me see. James Scott. 155 to 53. Let me see if I can do this real fast. Come on. 53 to 55. I need to read this whole section here, by the way. 53 to 55, 57. Here it is. One morning when it was already getting cold, a runner came to our village out of breath, saying haltingly, "Talking papers. They're sending people talking papers. People are already disappearing. What's left behind is being stolen. They're sending us to a burial ground. They keep talking about Judgment Day. We need to either hide or mix with other tribes up north," the Cherokee in question. These demons are shooting Istajatis, which is, red people, Stajatis. Okay. If we resist, I have to warn the next village. He left. Even though I was just a boy, I knew that something was very, very bad was about to happen. A dark cloud hovered over us. I don't know how many days went by. We started gathering provisions. We talked about the other Idawas towns. The earth trembled, and even the trees seemed to be shaking. The hovering dark cloud brought the evil men sooner than we expected. The soldiers started shooting. The whites rounded us up like cattle and put shackles on the strong men. Remember, give me a few minutes. I'll give you chocolate, okay? There was a silent cry, no words, so devastating, silent prayers, then low humming of the chant of communal encouragement. Wihina, wihina. Gun butts were hitting mouths. The gun butt. Gun stock. That morning, cold winds blew like Judgment Day. We did not know where we were heading. There were talking papers, more talking papers. Okay, stealing. Anyways, all you guys get the gist of that. The whites would keep on bringing talking papers, and tragedy always followed. Along the trail, they split us up. I lost my mother and father and ended up with an uncle. The little babies sometimes would have their heads smashed against a tree. Strong shackled men were used for pulling wagons and chopping wood. Those who got sick Those who got sick were left or dumped by the soldiers. There were hardly any food. There was hardly any food. People were hungry, cold, frostbitten. The whites roasted meat, and the aroma made you want to die. Each time someone fell, they sacrificed, saying, "Take my blanket, I'm going home." The chilling wind never left us. Give me a few minutes, Michael. We have seen blizzards. Now we are in one. Even strong buffalo would not have survived such a winter. Somehow, Isaac Giramisi was with us. God. Most of the time, children walked. However, sometimes they were allowed to ride in a wagon with older folks. About that time, we reached Indian territory. Michael, I can't do this right here. Take it. Go. About the time we reached Indian territory, there was very few of us, mostly older children and shackled men. After our walk, there were no babies left. They had killed the babies. Hardly any woman made it. I only had one uncle left. We began with about 500 in our group, and we wound up with 50, and we wound up near Okima, Asilanubi, Greenleaf, the places where we finished growing up. Those places were near some Christian Indians who had already got there before us. Nistapoki, the last day, I was always looking for it, but it did not come. It took 20 years for the nightmares to lessen. So he was like pushing 30 by the time the nightmares were kind of going away. And then he goes on to talk about, he says, "You've got to know your relatives. I am bear and your mother is a bear, and so I am here. Be watchful of the whites. They snake you welcome. The snake you welcome will be the one that destroys you. They will sell their own mother. They will leave their burial grounds. They have no roots. They don't know where their umbilical cord is buried," which is where you're supposed to be buried apparently when you die, is wherever your umbilical cord is buried. "That is why they are restless. If you allow one in, you can't get rid of him. Acquisition, private property, and trickery, that is their way. There's nothing you can do. They multiply like flies, and they keep coming when they want something. They use talking papers. They came to me with the talking papers after they gave me 160 acres of allotment land. Then with papers, they said if I give the land, I would have food for my relatives and myself. I signed over 3/4 of my land in exchange for a guarantee for food. I got tricked again. I had become Christian. I had forgotten how deceptive they can be. I thought they were friends, but I lost. We don't have any beans or flour. Whatever little land you have left, hold on to it. If it takes the rest of your life, learn about talking papers. It's full of trickery. For your own survival, transplant pecans and water them. I am old. I can't do it. See those berries? Those are the poisonous kind. If you know what is what out there, you won't be hungry. Look at your mother, Mary. She sold food in the Depression. Always identify the plants. Know the woods and don't be wasteful." It's hard to get through that. Now, I don't care if your family was burned at Fort Mims. If you're an angry white man, you out there and killing Indian babies, may God have mercy in your soul, because I wouldn't. If you think it was just the Creeks they're doing it to because of Fort Mims, think again. This is from Betty Woodall, September 20th, 1837, when it comes to the Trail of Tears. Some historians say that the Trail of Tears, all the women and children were allowed to ride, but my mother told me, her mother was white, I believe she said here, that not a single woman rode unless she was sick and not able to walk. My mother walked every step of the way out here. The government furnished green coffee and the grain for Indians along the route. Anyways, I said her mother was smart like a white. Anyways, yeah, I'm going to move forward here because I'm running out of time. My mother told me about the many hardships and privations she and the rest of the women suffered while on their way from Georgia. Some of them were almost unbelievable, yet I know they are true, for my mother would have no motive in telling it if it had not been so. She was a white woman married to a half Cherokee man. On one occasion, she told of an officer in charge of one of the wagons who killed a little baby because it cried all the time. It was only 4 days old. And the mother was forced to walk and carry it. And because it cried all the time, and the young mother could not quiet it, the officer took it away from her and dashed its little head against the tree and killed it. So I don't really care if you're I don't care what your parents did to you or did to somebody else. That doesn't mean it's your fault. We have to find ways to forgive other people, forgive the past. We can't do anything about it. But if my dad kills your dad, that doesn't mean that you have to kill me or my baby or vice versa. This is evil. There's no excuse for any of this behavior. I don't care what happened at Fort Mims. I don't care what happened, not at Fort Mims, but anywhere else. This is evil. And this wasn't just done to the Creeks. This is done to the Cherokee as well. And it was done to, I'm sure, the Choctaw, Chickasaw, and Seminole as well. And any group that these soldiers got their hands on. So I'm going to look into this some more. I'm going to share more with you guys as time goes on. I'm going to end this video now. I'm going to try to calm down. So thanks for listening. Talk to you later. Mado.